able to leave their firms and go home. 2 people have died, a 13-year-old boy and a 68-year-old man. Tonight, the Chief Constable of South Yorkshire told Sky News that people shouldn't try to get into the centre of Sheffield in the morning. The worst hit was a complex of companies on the Brightside Lane area of the city. Among those affected were a Royal Mail distribution centre and a call centre and a building society. Sky's Paul Harrison reports on the drama in Sheffield.
One by one, the stranded were airlifted to safety. The Brightside area of Sheffield became submerged under several feet of water as the River Don suddenly burst its banks. Hundreds of others marooned in the business and commercial district watched the waters rising. Just like the 200 staff at Sheffield's Royal Mail distribution centre, they waited for their turn to be rescued.
No, they didn't send anybody home. No, it seemed to catch people unawares as the severity of the situation.
How much water do you think is surrounding your building?
It's just several feet of water, but it's contaminated with sewage and everything, so we can't actually wade through it, so it's not safe.
Thousands of houses too were left without power, as the emergency services also battled on the ground to reach those cut off. Some took it upon themselves to wade to drier ground, but for others it was just too dangerous.
Someone just came out, the water just took off of me and I went underwater. You know, it's unbelievable.
We were stranded in the cars for a couple of hours, you know, and the water got higher and higher, so we thought it was best to leave the cars.
And the rising torrent was quick to claim its first 2 victims.
Earlier tonight we did recover from the River Sheaf the body of a young man which we believe is linked to an early incident in respect of a missing person, and we're now pursuing that in respect of confirming identification. And I'm afraid the night has also seen another casualty, as we have the body of a 68-year-old man who was dead on arrival at hospital in Sheffield after he was swept away whilst crossing a road.
But the water itself wasn't the only danger to those trapped inside buildings.
Unfortunately, in the Forge Masters Works, we have about 900 tonnes of molten metal in there, in the foundry, and we have floodwater flowing over that. That's causing us considerable difficulties.
And many out for the day at the city's Meadow Hall shopping centre found themselves isolated by the unexpected deluge.
Well, when I saw kind of within minutes the water rising that much, it was quite frightening, because I thought that the motor was going to give up, and I was going to be trapped with a baby with like very little food, hardly any milk.
The 3 RAF helicopters, under pressure as darkness loomed, began winching groups to safety. People who'd simply been unaware the Environment Agency had issued a severe flood warning for the area.
At the moment, it's the risk to life that's the greatest problem, I believe. But I want to pay tribute to all the emergency services that are working really hard at the moment to try and ensure that we don't lose lives and that we rescue everybody from these trapped buildings and cars.
There are potentially hundreds of people still to be rescued, and with rain falling in the Peak District around the city, making its way down into the River Don and surrounding rivers, things could get worse before they get better. Paul Harrison, Sky News.
Well, Sky's Mike McCarthy is in Sheffield.
Yes, as darkness fell this evening, the job for the emergency services became, as you might expect, so much worse. They'd already rescued round about 100 people, and they haven't been sure just how many. They've been inundated with calls from people in their factories and offices trying to get home, stranded, and in some cases the industrial sector below me to the east end of Sheffield is completely cut off. It's become an island. The RAF helicopters will be working for many hours to come, trying to identify where people are still stuck, where they're stranded. They've already airlifted many people from rooftops, from second, third stories of the places where they work, and Sheffield has seen nothing like this at all. There'll be very severe and very difficult questions about how a city of this size could be reduced to the picture of chaos that has emerged this evening.
Well, we can now talk to Michael Mulford from the RAF Kinloss Rescue Centre. Michael, thank you very much for joining us. First of all, we know that hundreds are trapped in buildings and offices, and even in their cars as well. Will you tell us about the rescue operation that's currently in place?
Well, as things stand, we have had 3 helicopters working for 7 or 8 hours now, and we are withdrawing 2 of them as we speak, and the third will go back to its base shortly. From that, you can tell that we have completed the rescues of the priority cases, and at the last count it's well over 100 people who have been winched to safety. For everyone else, it's going to be a long night. They really will have to wait for the water to recede. They are in the safest place, they are in the best place they could be in a situation like this, but it's clearly our task is immediate life-saving. Anyone who is, a bit miserable, a bit cold, sitting in the office many hours after they would normally go home. Well, we are satisfied that they are not at risk, they are not in danger, and that we have now rescued all the people who were in immediate danger.
Well, you tell us the situation with the actual water itself. I mean, is it still rising, or is it now starting to drop?
As far as we know, the water is still, a major threat to life and limb down in the streets. What we are looking at is, where people are and what situation they're in. I mean, my understanding is there is some more rain to come at midnight, and then in the hours after that, one could look to the water settling down and receding. And at that point, I think the tremendous amount of social work and housing work and rescue work having finished, then it falls to the other agencies to pick up what will be undoubtedly an enormous task over the next few days immediately, and then over the next few months after that.
And also, I mean, those that are trapped, will they be staying where they are overnight?
Well, that is the safest place for them. If they are not, as we believe, in immediate danger, then they are in the best place. I mean, many of the rescues, yes, we've done over 100, but our colleagues in police and fire across the region have also done many. And really we are at, I think, that point where we can say, okay, we now know who's where, we now know how many, but it's clearly not the best practice to try and take people out of what is a relatively safe situation.
Well, Michael, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you very much. Well, the events in Sheffield came at the end of a day when large parts of Britain were battered by torrential rains. One man died in Hull while his foot became trapped in a drain as the waters rose. Sky's Derek Tedder reports.
The man had become trapped after trying to work on a metal drain grill beside a culvert. It's believed the pressure of the storm water forced his foot into the drain and he simply couldn't remove it. By the time the emergency services had arrived on the scene, the man's colleagues and a number of passers-by had already tried in vain to free him. The floodwaters rose, and within a short time the man, believed to be in his 20s, soon became all but submerged. Police divers struggled to keep his head above the waterline, but after 3 hours in the cold water, the man died.
The man was trapped underwater, or his leg was trapped underwater. He was trapped in 2 places, and we couldn't get to it. The crews, however much people actually went under this water, which has got raw sewage in it, in equipment that's not made for that, just the normal uniforms, to try and release him in the first instance. And quite clearly, because of the flow of the water, and where this man was trapped was almost impossible to stand because of the flow of the water and rocks and debris coming through. It was terrible conditions in there, obviously freezing as well. Our crews arrived with specialist wet gear, and the underwater search unit arrived with their equipment, but the flood waters were rising and rising, and the flow was so fast that unfortunately we couldn't save the gentleman.
This was a scene in Louth in Lincolnshire. From the air it was clear that scores of houses and other properties are at the very least severely waterlogged. The floodwaters continue to rise, and there are now fears that people may have to be evacuated from their homes. In Rotherham in Nottinghamshire, the residents have seen all this before. Some have told us that new flood defences should have prevented the waters from reaching their homes.
All the authorities, the Environmental Board and the Severn Trent, they all said it'll never happen again. And I'm afraid that's the watchword at the moment. It'll never happen again, but it has.
One hell of a blow. It's the second time in 3 days, it was 4 days. And this time it's gone in the house, and What lot can you do? Not a lot.
Across the whole country, drivers have been forced to abandon their cars as the floodwaters rose throughout the day. Roads in Rotherham very quickly became impassable. Many drivers faced with the prospect of being stranded trying to battle through the water, but very quickly found that their cars simply couldn't cope. In Wetherby, several RAF search and rescue helicopters were scrambled to look for stranded drivers.
They have been tasked by Humberside Fire and Rescue, our colleagues there, to search this area of the A1079 south of Beverley. But it's almost inevitable that where you have the beginnings of maybe one or two vehicles, then we would certainly anticipate that as the day goes by and the water levels rise, that we're going to get more and more calls like that.
Throughout the day, Sky News viewers have been sending in their own pictures and videos of the flooding near to where they live and work. In Spalding, a viewer caught this image of a tornado on his mobile phone. Back in Hull tonight, and an investigation has begun to establish how the man became trapped in the drain. The emergency services say that drastic measures, including amputating his leg, were not possible because of the conditions and the fast-flowing water. Derek Tedder, Sky News.
Let's just have a look at the very latest pictures we've got for you coming in from the Sky helicopter. This is some of the devastation, the aftermath. Just debris tossed everywhere by these waters. Heard reports of cars being thrown around. This is a drying out zone of Rotherham. You can see the fire tender there, just doing some last minute, some first reports of sort of tidying up. Checking people are okay. Number of people have had to stay at their workplace, couldn't get home last night, used the office upstairs to crash out on the floor. This story is being repeated, and thank you for them. Do keep them coming into us of how you've managed to survive the night. It's not over by any means, this, as we keep one eye on those pictures of that particular area of town. Let's just show you this particular emergency which is ongoing, and the diagram I can give you now of this area here, which is the area. It's a slightly different view than we've seen from our helicopter. If I just zoom it in a little bit further, this is the corner of this dam that has been, this is the bank which has been cut away. This is, if you like, a few hours old aerial map, and it's through this culvert here that they're directing the water. We've seen it charging downhill in this sort of direction. Now, why are they concerned? Well, if we just take that off for a second and I zoom this map out, I can show you from the reservoir, the Ulley reservoir, the fall of water would come generally in this direction, I'm guided. And the problem being that this is the M1 motorway, and that has been shut for the time being between these two junctions. So if we take that off a little and come a little bit further, there are these houses in the sort of Wiston area which might be under threat. And again, if we just move our map a little bit further over here, I can zoom in on the power station, the sort of generating plant substation area here, and this could well be in the path of any waters. So let's just have a look at the aerial shot from this dam area. And this is now, it's just slightly inverted from the diagram I was showing you, right? We're looking at it from a different angle. But you can see the sheer amount of water coming down at the moment. And they're encouraging this in the sense that they've actually pumping water out of the reservoir behind that now broken wall in order to try and relieve the pressure in case something should go wrong. If we just, can you just put the helicopter pictures here, and I'll just point out where we're working here, lifting sandbags into position, as you saw on that shot. There we go. And you can see how the flow of water is going rough in this direction here, but they're also trying to push more water down the side of our frame as we look. And then the crane here, we saw it a little earlier, just lifting sandbags into another area to try and control this flow of water. Now then, more pictures, and we can see this is going to take a good while, isn't it? And it's good to hear, Anna, that the emergency, in the sense of people being okay, from what we know, is over. They've survived the night. But now the clear-up for some begins, and for some, no clear-up possible. Look at this. This is downtown Rotherham this morning.
I know, it is quite extraordinary, and obviously those homeowners are going to be taking stock of the kind of damage to their homes, their businesses, their property across not just this part of the country but others affected by the floods. I mean, the cost of this, it's not worth thinking about really, Martin, isn't it? It could cost tens of millions of pounds. Insurance claims will be going in as we speak for this, inevitably. British insurers have issued an action plan for people with property damaged by the floods, which have, of course, also claimed the lives of 3 people. We shouldn't forget that.
Indeed so. And these are some pictures we shot a little earlier. I think we can go back to the live picture, which are coming in right now. And this is an area you can see it should be a car park, but somebody just trying to rescue their car. Parking bays, I think, there. Now, see the context of this. If the camera zooms back a bit, they're just pushing the car towards the edge of that, oh dear, muddy, muddy water there to try and dry that vehicle out. Now, where are we? In a shopping centre area, I think it is. Look at that. And all the parking bays completely covered underwater. And that's consistent, is it, with a number of people? Thank you for the emails, cards and pictures and videos you've been sending us. This would be, there's a picture from the chopper itself, and here's some earlier picture.
While we're looking at these pictures, let me just bring in David King. He's in our central London studios, but I'm hoping that he's able to see some of the pictures that we're showing. He's Director of Water Management at the Environment Agency. David King, thanks very much indeed for talking to us this morning. We've been particularly focusing today on this dam in Rotherham and the concerns over it bursting. What's your take on the situation there? Do you believe it to be under control?
Well, everything I think that can be done is being done, in that you've got the emergency services on site, and you've also got the structural engineers, and they're pumping down the dam, and in addition they have evacuated the people in the immediate vicinity.
Looking back with hindsight, do you think that more could have been done?
Well, I mean, I think the point that I would make is that you can't stop floods happening. You can only mitigate against them. And the level of rainfall that we've had over the last 24 hours, it was in excess of 100 metres in places. And when you get that level of rain, then you're going to get flooding, and these type of incidents, unfortunately, will happen.
The pictures that we're watching this morning are quite extraordinary. Did you think it would be this bad?
Well, certainly we were aware that there was severe rain moving in, and therefore we knew there would be widespread flooding. But what's difficult and impossible is to know precisely where that's going to occur. But obviously we have provided warnings to people, and where defences are in place, our understanding is that those defences have performed their task. However, in some cases those defences, the level of rain has been greater than the design of the actual defence itself.
So are the flood defences in this country good enough, in your view?
Well, I mean, the question, I think the existing defences are fit for purpose. The question going forward really is that there is need for additional investment. And that is the point that we would make, because against the background of climate change, we might expect these type of events to occur more frequently, and therefore risk will increase. And with risk increasing, if you want to manage it down, then there needs to be additional investment.
Is this the result of climate change?
Well, you can't say any one event or any 1 week is the result of climate change, but it's certainly in keeping with what we would expect, in that you'll see an increase in the frequency of storms and in the severity of storms.
So what you're saying is we should be prepared to see more of the same, of these sort of weather conditions at the end of June?
Well, absolutely, because climate change is here and now, and irrespective of how we get to grips with emissions going forward, we know that there's already built into the system changes occurring, and those changes will manifest themselves in more frequent storms, as we've seen over the last few days.
We must be talking about a lot of money, mustn't we? I mean, this time last year we were talking about problems with droughts, weren't we? We had hosepipe bans across the country, fears of our reservoirs running dry. We're now talking about the risk of them overflowing. A lot of money has to be spent, doesn't it, to cater for all those different scenarios?
Well, indeed, that is correct. And the agency, the Environment Agency that I work for, is the principal agency responsible for flood defence, and we're already spending about £500 million a year on reducing flood risk. But the economic damage, as you will know and as viewers will know, is considerable when you have events like this. It run into tens, if not hundreds of millions of pounds.
David King, we appreciate your time. David King, Director of Water Management at the Environment Agency. Thanks very much indeed for that.
Thank you.
Business news now. Shirley's.
Burstwick, the floodwater is still rising. We've spent the day with this community who've been rescuing each other from this.
Thank you, Matt. And of course, the all-important weather details come from Paul.
And of course, the question is there more rain on the way over the next 4 or 5 days for Yorkshire and for Lincolnshire? Join me in a few minutes. I'll have the full forecast.
Hello, good evening. There have been large-scale evacuations across our region today following a second wave of flash floods. The emergency services were forced to use boats in several areas to rescue children and families from a torrent of water. Now, the areas affected included Hull, Burstwick, Grimsby, Lincoln and Wainfleet. Humberside Fire and Rescue say they've received 2,500 flood-related calls since yesterday morning. Lincolnshire Fire and Rescue says it's dealt with 1,350 in the last 24 hours alone. And almost 200 schools have been closed today in East Yorkshire and Lincolnshire by the floods. Meanwhile, tributes have been paid to the one man who lost his life in the floods yesterday. Flowers have been left at the scene where 28-year-old Michael Barnett died after becoming trapped in a storm drain in Hessel. He was trying to clear debris from a temporary metal grate which had been put in place following the previous floods. Today, the water level has dropped and an investigation into his death is underway. Prime Minister Tony Blair has been among those offering condolences.
First of all, I would like to express my sympathy for the families that have lost loved ones as a result of what has happened, and extend our sympathy to everyone who's been displaced by the floods. And you know, this has been, I think, an extraordinary and very serious event for us.
Well, this evening we've got reporters across the region after another day of rising waters, evacuations and disruption. Our political editor, Tim Iredale, is live for us tonight at Lincoln College, which has been set up as an emergency shelter. Tim.
Yes, good evening, Peter. I'm here at the refectory at Lincoln College, where dozens of people have been evacuated tonight from a 16-storey block of flats, Shuttleworth House, near the centre of Lincoln. I think it's fair to say, on the whole, the spirits here are pretty good, considering these people had to leave really at short notice. They had to leave all their valuables and belongings behind. They've only got the clothes they're wearing now, and they don't know when they're going to be allowed back home. But there's plenty of tea and coffee on offer, hot meals here being served. What's on the menu tonight?
We've got chicken and pasta bake tonight.
Looks delicious. Phil Connell's been following the day's events here. Here's his report.
The residents of Shuttleworth House in Lincoln woke this morning to find they'd been surrounded by a lake. By mid-morning, a state of emergency was declared, and trapped by rising water, the occupants of this block of flats, 130 in all, were rescued one by one.
It's been a nightmare, mate. You know, it's just been crazy. I don't know where I have to go already now. So I'm asking to cancel, sort it out as soon as possible, please, because nowhere else to go.
A week-old baby and a rare lizard were amongst those that were ferried to dry land. For the rescue teams, it was a non-stop job in difficult conditions.
Tiring. We've had multiple rescues from the flats. As you can see, the water's not really deep, but it's, you know, got all different contaminants in, sewage, etc. So it's just nice that we get the members of the public out the flat.
And here in Hull, emergency rescue crafts have also been at full stretch. Sorrel Drive in the west of the city has been one of the hardest hit areas. On this road alone, 90 people have been evacuated from their homes. No one has ever seen anything like it.
We went to bed thinking, well, it's all going back now. When we get up in the morning, it'll be a little bit better. But unfortunately, the setting dyke land drain burst up Priory Road, and we seem to have got the lot.
It's at times like this you tend to find the community spirit develops, you know, and people who perhaps have never talked to next door neighbours suddenly get on together, dig in together and really pitch hard. Clearly last night we had a fairly serious operation with 58 very elderly people who had to be evacuated. They were very traumatised, very upset. So right across the spectrum really, a differing number of emotions.
For the region's elderly, the mass evacuations from their homes have been even more traumatic. This brave lady was one of 6 rescued from the Willows residential home in Grimsby, with the road outside more like a fast-flowing river. For those trapped inside, there was only one way out. And for all those affected, it will be a long and uncomfortable night sleeping in emergency accommodation, with many still not sure when their homes will be safe and fit to go back to.
Yeah, amazing scenes there. We're back live in Lincoln. Let's chat to a couple of the residents who were rescued from Shuttleworth House, as seen in Phil's report there. You two guys, just tell us who you are.
Darren Simpson. Yeah, and John Ranshaw.
And your tea's just arrived, but I'm going to have to interrupt. I'm sorry about that.
That's all okay, no problem.
Just talk us through the day's events. I mean, what sort of, how much notice did you get to evacuate?
Hardly any at all. I got a knock on the door, and there was a policeman there, and he said, "Could you evacuate now, please?" We didn't have time to get any of my valuables. I left my phone, my wallet, everything. In fact, all I've got is what I'm wearing now, you know. So I didn't get a change of clothes or anything.
And ironically, you're a student here, so this is home from home for you.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, I often come in here during classes, you know, in this particular part. Yeah.
John, any indication how long you'll be here?
No idea at all. We were just told, pack up, come, and that's it. So we don't know how long we're going to be. Could be a day, could be 2 or more.
Yeah, difficult times. Listen, I think you better go on with tea before it gets cold. We have to move on because more flood alerts across our region today. Let's go now to the village of Burstwick in East Yorkshire and join Matt Richards.
Well, here in Burstwick, things certainly aren't improving. The water is still rising. Someone's just told me they've been measuring it, and within the last couple of hours, it's already risen another foot or so. The alarms you can hear in the background have been caused by the water, and right along this close, people have had to leave their homes. You might be able to see over there, the water level's almost up to the letterboxes. People have had to be rescued from these homes in rubber dinghies. The emergency services have obviously had other priorities across the region. So here, this has all been about the community clubbing together and helping each other out.
It's just coming to everyone's gardens and flooded the street, and everyone's just had to come out on boats and dinghies, just like getting everyone from the streets on boats.
It was in the house, and its carpets are flooded, and it's half up, 2 steps gone up the stairs.
It's coming up to my front door now, but I'm obviously not as bad as everybody else around here, so we've been just nipping in and out of people's houses and shifting stuff and helping them as much as we could, really.
Once cars come round, it swishes, and it was sort of just coming in. So I think if it gets higher, it'll be in the house.
So all day, people here have been salvaging what they can from their homes. John, I know you live next door. What's the situation been like for you?
We've watched it from about 6 o'clock this morning, slowly rising. We went to bed last night, there was just a puddle in the middle. We got up this morning, half my garden at the front was covered. There was people in boats, rescuing people with children and elderly. It was wading through over the waist high, you know. It was quite heartening, really, to see it.
So this has all been about neighbours helping each other out all day, hasn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. It's been really good.
Well, John, I wish you the best of luck, but the water here, as we were saying earlier, is still rising, and the people here increasingly concerned as the night draws on.
Matt, thank you. I'm joined now by Ronnie Myers, who's in charge of the emergency planning unit here. Busy day for you, Ronnie?
Yeah, very much so.
Everyone seems to be working well, though.
Yeah, everybody's pulled together. It's a multi-agency task force that we've put together here in the rest centre in order to look after the needs of the people who have been evacuated.
Well, I know you've got to get on and see to the troops, so we'll cross back to Peter now and more from us later, Peter.
Tim, thank you very much indeed. Well, while floodwaters have continued to rise in many parts of the region for hundreds of people, the clean-up started this morning. As reported yesterday, the town of Louth has been badly hit. Now the waters have subsided and residents must assess the damage and begin to clean up. Jake Zuckerman has this report.
As a new day dawned in Louth, the falling water level exposed a catalogue of damage.
I can't do anything until the assessor for my insurance has been, so I can't touch anything.
The weight of the water was enough to demolish this brick wall. Nearby houses had been inundated and were thick with mud.
Got the cats upstairs, just did what you could, shout the neighbours, shift your electrics, and just, you know, I didn't know what to do to start with. You know, like, where do you start? What do you do?
It's not just homes that have been damaged, local businesses were affected too. This family printing firm faces a repair bill in excess of £50,000.
All the floor was covered in paper. There's a digital printer there that is ruined. The guillotine, the 2 Heidelbergs, the litho machine are all down because the electric motors were underwater. We've already sent 1 skip full of paper away and another skip's arriving very shortly. But our aim is to try and get up and going. We are trying to get rid of parcels today because we've got customers waiting.
Not all the damage can be put down to the forces of nature. Here, opportunistic thieves broke into several cars, knowing their owners had most likely left the area.
A very good morning to you from the Woolpack pub.
BBC Radio Lincolnshire's Rod Whiting spent the night in Louth. He broadcast the breakfast show live from the town this morning.
Certainly in terms of the weather situation, no, I've never seen anything quite like this. Trying to keep up with what's happening and try and stay one step ahead of everything so that people get the information they need has been a real challenge.
Many residents have yet to return to their homes. Who knows what scenes of damage they'll find behind the piles of sandbags.
Well, when you look at those pictures, you can see why the last 2 days have been the busiest on record for our emergency services. Earlier today, we spoke to the Environment Secretary, David Miliband, who paid tribute to their work.
Floods that we're seeing are every householder's a nightmare. The first priority of the local authorities and the local police is to protect life and limb, and that's what they've been doing in a heroic way, including the RAF, over the last 24 hours. The importance of the local government response is absolutely central, and obviously we're working very closely with the local authorities to ensure that they do meet residents' concerns.
Well, that's the government paying tribute. I'm joined now live tonight by Tim Hollis, the Chief Constable of Humberside Police. Tim, good evening to you.
Good evening.
Just how bad has this 36 hours been for the Blue Light Services?
It's probably been the most challenging period in our history for Humberside Police and Fire and Rescue, and also, of course, for the other agencies with whom we've been working very hard over the last 36 hours.
And we've been hearing about these large-scale evacuations in Hull, Burstwick and Grimsby. I mean, a lot of people displaced tonight and moving out.
Yeah, I mean, my heart goes out to people, and it's almost, there's 2 groups. There are some who it was a wet day, their house is safe and secure and dry, and yet quarter of a mile away you can have people who are actually, as you've seen already, having their homes destroyed and very badly damaged by the water. So quite challenging for all of us.
And on a security front, I mean, people don't like leaving their homes, do they? They worry about what might happen.
Yes, of course, which is why we put a lot of effort. The police, we've been running a silver control for the whole of Humberside. We've had all 4 local authorities, the police, all the emergency services, environmental agency, really just knitting the fabric of all those agencies together in order to provide the service and to prioritise what has been a huge number of calls for assistance that we've been having.
So you must be fully stretched.
We are, but we're coping, Peter, and actually people are rallied to the cause, working very long hours in very difficult conditions, but delivering what people want.
One thing you did want to talk about is the flood water on the ground, the fact that some people will walk through it just because they need to get from A to B, and also kids playing in it as well.
Yeah, and there are 2 issues. One, there's a bit more thoughtfulness sometimes. There have been instances of people, for example, driving 4x4 vehicles which are above the flood, but driving really quite high speed through water. And of course, if your house, it's lappy at the doorstep, well, having someone do that is fairly thoughtless. There are some health issues also for young kids playing, because some of this water sadly has become polluted, and so there are some concerns over the longer term impacts for the big clean-up when it starts in the near future.
And the tragedy yesterday showed just how dangerous water can be and how much we must respect
it. I spoke to the police officers last night who were personally involved in that, and again today, and actually that was a very difficult incident. Thoughts go to the family, but also to the police and the firefighters who were involved in that rescue attempt.
Indeed. Chief Constable, thank you very much, Steve, for coming in.
Thank you.
Well, of course, it's not just homes and businesses that have been affected. Commuters and people just trying to travel around the region have been struggling as well. Now, the latest tonight is that the M1 remains closed between junctions 32 and 36. Parts of the A63 are still shut, and many train services have been suspended, and buses are still running behind schedule as they struggle to get through the standing water. Now, in all cases, of course, the advice is to listen to your own BBC local radio station. Those are the frequencies there, and we'll bring you all the best contacts for information at the end of the programme, just in a few minutes' time. Well, thank you very much indeed for all the pictures that you've been sending in. Most grateful to you. Here's just a little selection of some of the pictures that have been in over the last few days. James Moon of Orchard Park in Hull. Matt Hartwig of Nettleham near Lincoln took this picture, the water there in Nettleham. Gary Morrison, this is Beverley there. Dennis Healy in Leconfield, soldiers there trying to keep their truck upright. Dick Black at Bletchford between Louth and Horncastle took this picture. A pensioner rescued there in a wheelie bin. And finally, Jane Hunt of Horncastle, ducks seeking refuge on a picnic table. Jane, thank you very much indeed. As I say, we've had loads and loads of pictures. Thank you very much indeed for all of those. Unfortunately, don't have time to show all of the pictures you've been sending in, but you can keep them coming in, send them in to us. And if you want to see all of our pictures, then go to the websites, bbc.co.uk/Humber or /Lincolnshire. And if you want to send a picture in, of course, the usual email address, looknorth@bbc.co.uk. Thanks for being there. The time is 6:45 this Tuesday night on Look North. Thanks for your company. Paul's joining us now with the...
Well, that's our story now too.